Chapter 42. Captain, retreat to the seam, now. Oakes fired another round from his rifle at the torn-apart cargo bay door. The creatures had managed to rip it partway open, one side buckled in its frame. The gap was more than large enough for them to spit acid through, but not quite wide enough for the aliens to get inside. Another pull or two, and that would change. The building EMR signal, so much like the one she'd detected moments before the explosion that created Neptune Scar, told her the event was imminent. They were still hundreds of kilometers from the scar, and she could only hope they'd done enough damage. After flashing a rapid message and repeating it 100 times, she hit her attitude thrusters, chose a direction away from both the scar and the Leviathan, and pushed the throttle to 4Gs. Oakes stumble-walked to the seam, mag-locked himself to the bulkhead, and aimed his rifle back at the cargo bay door. "I'm good," he said. Black deactivated all the grav plates and accelerated as fast as she dared. The LeBlanc had already streaked by, its graviton cannons still firing at random behind Black and creating a deadly buffer zone. As she accelerated past 12 Gs, she saw Oakes's vitals beginning to struggle. The space thousands of kilometers behind her vibrated like a tuning fork, the shimmer's amplitude rising and rising before collapsing in on itself. A bright green star appeared in the midst of the utter darkness before flaring out into a nova of color. The range of the exotic EMR seemed far less than when the Neptune Scar had been created. Perhaps the damage they'd done to the Leviathan, or the sheer number of its progeny they had destroyed, had kept it from reaching apocalyptic critical mass. Maybe the graviton generator had drained it. Black cut her acceleration to 8 Gs as she became more certain she'd outrun whatever effects the implosion had created. She hailed the LeBlanc, and it responded to the hail with garbage characters. Confused, she sent a message asking who was piloting the craft. Another stream of nonsensical characters appeared over the comms. She cut her acceleration to 1G and changed her attitude to return to Trident Station. Her fuel reserves were running low, and she'd have to begin coasting at some point soon. "Captain," she called to Oakes, "you might want to enter stasis now." He groaned in relief. "Wondered when you were going to stop trying to squash me." "I believe we stopped the scar," she said. "I am headed back to Trident. We are quite low on fuel, but I will still have to make a series of hard burns to properly adjust our trajectory. While those maneuvers will not be fatal to you, they will be highly uncomfortable." "How uncomfortable? I fucking hate stasis, Black." "Maximum of 10 Gs for 25-second durations, 10 burns in total." "I should probably take apart the grav generator first," he said. Black considered that. "Perhaps we shouldn't. Would you mind returning to the cockpit? I believe your acceleration couch will be far more comfortable." Oakes grinned up at the camera. "Sounds good. Just one thing. What's going to happen if they get in the cargo bay?" "Gravity," she said. "It will keep them away long enough for you to provide assistance. Besides, I don't think we're likely to encounter any more of the creatures until we reach Trident." "Shit," Oakes said as he made his way to the cockpit. "Are they still under attack?" "Unknown," she said. "I'm not receiving any communications signals." "That's a little concerning. I still have my SV in here," he said, "in case they need help." "We're late," Black said softly. "I've told the LeBlanc to speed back. I assume she'll send a report of some kind when she reaches Trident space." "The LeBlanc?" Oakes asked. "Who's piloting her?" "I don't know," Black said. "Communications attempts have been frustrating to say the least. I only know that she provided telemetry, coordinates, and diversions. She also helped destroy the Leviathan, something we could not have done on our own." Oakes thought for a moment after strapping himself into the pilot's couch. "I thought that ship required an SE." "It does," she said. "Based on her movements and acceleration, it's clear she's traveling without a human crew." "Black," Oakes said. "Don't be offended, but that scares the shit out of me." "I'm not offended," she said, feeling warmth at his deference. "More amused that I feel the same way. However, I think in this case, our fears are mislaid." Lowell stayed at Talby's port side, keeping 5 meters between them, with Talby leading by a few. He still couldn't communicate with Went or the missing squad, but he could at least talk to Lowell. "Major, looks like you grew a long-ass tail." Talby grinned without glancing at the rear cam. He already knew what he'd see. "We're going over the top of Rack 2. We're going in about 5 rows deep, and then we're blasting the rest of the modules free of their moorings." Copy, Major," Lowell said. "My gunner says she's ready." "Oorah! Also, light up like a beacon. I want to make sure they chase us." "Where are we leading them?" Lowell asked as his SV brightened. "Where the void am I leading them?" Once we blast the rack, we'll see what they do. Just be prepared to follow my lead. Copy, Lowell said, a little less confidence in his voice than Talby would have liked. Then again, could Talby blame him? The funnel had closed the distance and was now a mere 20 meters from the SV's aft. The rear cam view filled with monstrous shadows and eyes that seemed as though they'd been cut from reality itself. The sight made his brain throb. Wiggins brought the turret to life, as did Lowell's gunner, and the funnel backed off again, its center a whirling vortex of shattered exo remains and lively, snapping teeth. Get ready, Talby said, and rotated the SV 45 degrees before engaging a 6G burn. The SV slid sideways over Rack 2, heading starboard. Wiggins counted off the rows of modules, and then his turret came to life. Lowell's gunner joined in, and they blasted apart the rack's mooring points. The modules drifted at a negative vector, quickly spreading out like ripples from a pond. Talby shot past the end of Rack 2, the funnel desperately trying to follow his move, but some of them banged into the rack's armor and shattered. Others slammed into the modules themselves, crashing through bulkheads or squashing themselves like bugs on a windscreen. Lowell's gunner had already switched away from hitting the rack's mooring points, and instead chopped away at the funnel's body with burst after burst of gravitic rounds. Wiggins dropped their last few remaining mines for good measure. Talby accelerated and headed for the shipyards, hoping its defenses might help thin out the herd. He wasn't wrong. The moment he and Lowell approached, the shipyards burned bright as a star. That was as much an invitation as he needed. We're going to lead them to the docks, Talby said. Stay on my wing and let's see what the collective has to say. Aye, sir. Lowell's voice sounded amused. Old Bastard was starting to enjoy this. The two SVs rose above the structure before diving toward the docks. That was the moment he realized the LeBlanc was not in her berth. Gun turrets sprouted from the shipyard's exterior, each aiming and beginning to blast away at the weakening funnel. The starfish were attempting to scatter, but between the two SVs and the shipyard's guns, there was nowhere to flee to. Hundreds of stragglers escaped the killing zone and headed back out into the shadows. The SVs continued flying past the shipyards before Talby led them back toward Trident. Rack 2's severed modules tumbled through space in slow motion, a few starfish clinging to them in confusion. Weapons free, he told Wiggins, and entered Rack 2's infrastructure tube. Talby wasn't surprised to see dark shapes dancing and moving at the far end of the tube. They were no doubt attempting to get in through the rack's maintenance airlock. He grinned. Hold on, Wiggins, Talby said, and rotated the craft 180 degrees so the turret pointed inward. We're going to jet backward. Moment you get a solution, you start firing again. Wait, isn't that how we ended up getting chased to begin with? Yep, can't argue with success. Talby hit the 4 thrusters, and the SV slowly accelerated backward. Without a string of modules to tear into and hide, the creatures were more or less trapped. Wiggins lit them up with gravitic rounds until his turrets overheated. When that happened, Talby rotated again and used the cabin guns. The remaining creatures tried to swarm but couldn't. When Wiggins' guns cooled, Talby rotated again and let his gunner finish the job. Kelly had been trying to hail Lowell, Talby, the commander, anyone that happened to be listening. She, Cuccia, and Osorio had been waiting far too long. They'd felt a lot of vibrations from inside the tube, but the creatures never broke through. Something else must have grabbed their attention, although she had no idea what that might be. Apart from Lowell blasting them to pieces, that is. Osorio was bleeding internally. They had to get him to the medbay or a metapod soon, or he might just bleed out. The bio-nannies were no doubt doing their best, but the creatures were poisonous on top of everything else. If they didn't dissolve you or tear you to pieces, they could always turn your blood into a toxic waste dump. His vitals were relatively stable, but she could tell a downward trend when she saw one. She turned to the Marine still maglocked to the bulkhead, his arms limp and face flushed. Cuccia, grab his shoulder. Let's get him down. What? Why? Osorio asked. He demagged when he felt pressure, and Kelly barely held his weight in time. Because we have places to be and things to do. Cuccia, we're getting to the skiff. Hoorah, he muttered softly, and they headed down the corridor. This was one area she wished she hadn't turned gravity on for. Then again, since Osorio already had internal bleeding, microgravity wasn't going to do him any favors. She could either risk him dying in flight or him dying right here. Lieutenant, Osorio panted, you sure this is a good idea? No, she admitted, but it's the only feasible one. Cuccia chuckled darkly. I think we could have used you during the satellite war. Seemed like the worse the decision you made, the better off you were. Wait, how's that work? She asked. thanking the void the module with their skiff was up ahead. Osorio coughed and ended with a liquid rasp. Some asshole lieutenant told us grunts to jump out of his ship with a fucking gaping hole in its side. Why was that such a bad idea? She asked. Because, Cuccia said, our people wouldn't know us from the other targets. We'd be fat prey for both sides. But, Osorio said, because we got kicked out into the debris field, no one even noticed. Only 2 of us died when the ship took a torpedo. Cuccia nodded. Could have been a lot worse. At least we had a shot at a pickup. Only lost 1 during that, Osorio said, a bubble of blood bursting on his lips. Don't talk, Kelly said. They reached the airlock and she held Osorio upright while Cuccia went through and cleared. Osorio's vitals had dropped below stable. She figured she had half an hour at most before his system simply collapsed. 1 lung was filling up with blood, although she had no idea why. Cuccia signaled her through the transaluminum and she half-carried, half-dragged Osorio into the airlock, which seemed to take forever to cycle. When the inner hatch opened, she found Cuccia had reoriented the skiff to make it easier for Osorio to get in. Can you climb into the turret? She asked him. He shook his head. Lieutenant in the turret. I'll set up shop at the gunnel and cover. The way he said that last, she thought, you'd almost think he wasn't dying. And if I said that's an order? He smiled. Then I say you'll have to pick me up and plop me in there. I can't move my hips. Which meant he wouldn't be able to use the turret either. Fuck. Cuccia, let's get him over the gunnel. They struggled to get him in, but he only cried out once, his vitals jumping before stabilizing, albeit in a lower state than before. Her mental clock, ticking off the beats of his life, sped up. As soon as he was mag-locked in, Calais climbed inside the turret and hooked in. Let's move it, Cuccia. Dorsal, training domes. Aye, sir. The skiff rotated and slowly pushed out of the fractured module. Calais expected a starfish to come swinging by, its arms reaching for one or all of them. Instead, Cuccia smoothly accelerated and rotated the skiff so it spiraled upward, but still close to Trident's hull. Strange shapes drifted beyond the station, their outlines occasionally shimmering before going dark again. Callie didn't know what that had been, but she imagined it had been a leviathan, or pieces of one. The darkness of space looked more normal now, stars twinkling against the backdrop instead of completely shrouded in twilight. Callie already felt a little bit better about their chances. All they needed was to make it to the domes. Cuccia pulled the skiff over the dorsal side and Callie's brain froze. Thousands of pine cones covered the deck plates with hundreds of starfish crawling around them as if in protection. Shit, she heard him say, and then Osorio leaned over the gunnel and started firing. Callie's brain unstuck from neutral and she swiveled the turret. She blasted a dense gathering of the pine cones with gravitic rounds, the starfish jumping off the hull plates in response. Watch for swarms, Callie shouted and focused on the incoming starfish. Head to Dome 3! The turret came to life and she fired deadly rounds into the swarming starfish. She may not have destroyed many of them, but it kept them from swarming. Cuccia wove the skiff around the first training dome much as he had when they were chased by the Leviathan. This time, however, she had targets to shoot at. As the skiff rounded the corner, she took a moment to fire more rounds at a field of pine cones. Before she had time to see if the shots hit, they rounded the far side of the dome and headed to Dome 4. Cuccia was snaking his way, while hugging the sides to remain beneath the overhang. Many of the starfish remained with their pine cone herd, occasionally rising to spit strings of acid at the skiff. Why weren't they chasing? Something hit the aft of the skiff, but she'd no idea what it was. Alpha, something may have attached to aft. Copy, Cuccia said. Osorio didn't respond. Moment we hit Dome 3, head for the bay. I'll get it open. Aye, sir, Cuccia said. He sounded less relieved and more concerned. The fact Osorio hadn't said anything hadn't been lost on him, either. Callie blasted away at the pine cones and starfish that remained in their way, the creatures fleeing rather than sticking around to fight. This wasn't like them. Not at all. She sent a command to Dome 3, and the cargo bay door slid upward enough for the skiff to crawl inside. Callie's heart thumped in her ears while she waited for the door to finally close. When the last of Neptune's light disappeared, leaving them in complete darkness, she finally exhaled. Dismount. Get him to a metapod. All clear, Callie said, as she climbed out of the turret. She hit the deck, unslung her rifle, and immediately faced aft. Swallowing hard, she set her helmet light to its dimmest setting, activated her low-light filters, and crouch-walked until she could see the skiff's aft end. Thick silver liquid shimmered in the minuscule light. She knew without needing to touch it that the stuff was highly corrosive. The outmost steel beneath it looked as though it had been both freshly polished and blasted with a flechette rifle at close range. The metal pitted and flaked, exposing the inner layers. This is different, she thought. Worse. Like they're more powerful than they were before. Somewhat certain the blob was inert, she walked to help Cuccia lift and carry Osorio from the skiff. The airlock cycled, and the trio entered the training dome, quickly jetting upward to the catwalk with their charge. As soon as they reached the metapod, Cuccia placed Osorio inside and closed the lid. The device's lights came to life, a pair of laser cutters appeared, and the beams sliced through Osorio's suit. The moment bare skin appeared, a sensor cluster descended and attached near his neck. A list of vitals sprang up on the holo display. Cuccia sighed, but she could tell he was smiling. He's alive, at least. Fixable, she said. He'll need the poison cleaned out of his bloodstream, but he'll live. I hope, she thought. What do we do now, Lieutenant? Go raid the ammo stores, she said. I want as many mags, energy cells, grenades, and claymores we can get our hands on. Get that done while I try and get command. Aye, sir. Also, watch your six, she said. We haven't cleared the dome. You too, sir. Cuccia turned on his heel and headed for the armory. Kelly didn't have high hopes for there being much ammunition in the dome, but since this was Dickerson's favorite, she thought it might have something. She connected to the dome's systems and jumped to Trident's internal comms. Command, this is Alpha. Do you read? Dunn responded immediately. Command here, Alpha. Sir, we're in Dome 3. One casualty, although he's stabilized for the moment. Copy, Alpha. Do you have any information about Beta and Rack 2? Shit, Copenhaver. No, sir. I've lost contact with my SV as well as the other squads. Copy, Dunn said. Sir, there are pine cones out here. Dunn didn't respond immediately. Instead, she received a connection request on her HUD. She accepted, and a cam feed from the dorsal combat airlock came into view. A corner of the hull plate had been torn upward, a cluster of pine cones seemingly feasting on the metal. A pair of starfish spat acid on the area every few seconds. They're trying to get in, she said to herself. Agreed, Dunn said. We have some surprises set up for them inside, but we don't have any personnel cannons covering all areas. She nodded. Something they'd have to fix, she assumed. Then again, if they had a real platoon, this wouldn't be much of a problem. So long as the Leviathan wasn't beating the shit out of you, Marines could take out a micro-horde all by themselves. When you were outnumbered 1,000 to 1, however, caution was the better part of valor. Sir, has anyone reported in? No, Alpha. Exterior comms took a hit from the Leviathan and backups went out too. Kelly ground her teeth as she pondered the situation. If general comms were active internally, what they needed was a patch receiver and transmitter. Her old SNR training reared its head. Sir, I might have a solution for that. Short term and short range, but might make us less deaf. What are you thinking? Dunn asked. Oh shit. Patch? Aye, sir, she grinned. Let me check the stores here. If we have them, I can put an array on top of Dome 3. If there's comms traffic, we'll catch it. Good thinking, Dunn said. Let me know when you're a go. Out. Kelly exhaled slowly, the electric tingling of hope still chasing away her own private shroud of doom. If they had the gear and the SVs were still roaming about, or Void helped them, Black herself, they had a shot. A shot was all she could ask for. Chapter 43. Talby led Lowell back to Rack 2, their gunners occasionally picking off an unwary starfish. Now that they were no longer being chased, he could take a little time to inspect the damage. Sir, Lowell said, permission to scout the disconnected modules? Granted, Talby said absently. Copy, sir, Lowell said. The craft dove below Rack 2 and continued chasing after the line of modules, still spreading apart in a rough ring. The rack had taken more than a little damage from the explosive rounds. Not only had the mooring points been shattered, but the rack itself appeared twisted, probably from the unbalanced mass tearing itself apart. He touched the jets and moved closer to the remaining rows of modules. At least one had been perforated as though a starfish had used a can opener on it. He jetted to the other side and found both the ventral and port bulkheads completely missing from one of the modules. Shattered carapaces and starfish arms floated into space along with the arm of a combat suit. Talby gritted his teeth as he scanned for skiff debris or another combat suit. Wiegans, keep an eye out for survivors. Aye, sir. He brought the SV close to the furthest module in the rack. The airlock had been twisted and remained opaque, impossible to see inside. The module's hull had buckled on the port side as though a large explosion had pushed it outward. Or maybe from a bunch of starfish fleeing, he thought. He dropped below the rack, looked upward, and his heart sank. The rear portion of his skiff was barely visible through a perforation in the bulkhead. Now he thought he knew what had happened to Copenhagen. Beta had been wiped out. A tear made its way out of his left eye, and he stubbornly blinked it away. "You have eyes on any bad guys?" Talby asked. "Not really," Wiegand said. "I see a few clusters out there, but they're staying way out of range." Talby glanced at the cam feed and pursed his lips. He'd seen them do this before. They were waiting for something. Even if only 25% of the station's turrets still functioned, the starfish would be easily picked apart if they came in as clusters. Then again, the speed with which they had moved was more than enough to make an inexperienced gunner miss. He wondered how well the trio had fared and if they kept a kill count. It certainly sounded like something Portunas would do. "Lowell?" "Aye, sir." "How's it looking?" Talby asked, already knowing the answer. "Most of the modules are scarred up from the explosions, some even perforated, but there are a couple of them intact." "Damn it, but we need a skiff," he said, wondering where the Void went and Kalimura were, if they were even alive. Good old Dickerson, she thought proudly. Kuchia had unloaded a complete trunk of enough ammo for 2 squads, more grenades and claymores than they could carry, and 2 SNR combat packs. Kelly would do more than kiss him the next time she saw the meathead. "What's the plan, Lieutenant?" Kuchia asked as he stuffed magazines into his pouches. "We're going to the top of Dome 3, get an emergency transmitter out, perform a patch, and find out where the fuck our air support is." "Hoorah!" Kuchia grinned. He reloaded his weapons, tossed away the spent mags, and checked his loadout. "Plenty of O2, plenty of energy, shit ton of ammo." Check, and double check, she said. "You run a patch before?" "No," Kuchia admitted. "We grunts didn't get much engineering training." She'd expected his answer. "SNR basics." She reached into the SNR pack and pulled out the collapsible antenna. Capable of all-band radio, laser, and, once upon a time, block comms, the emergency comms gear was designed for easy setup and idiot-proof operation, which meant it was almost usable by squiddies. Kelly grinned. Dickerson would be so proud. Sounded like something he would say. "What do you need me to do, LT?" "Give me cover," she said. "Beyond that, don't get dead." "Copy that, sir." Kelly clamped the antenna pack to her back while keeping her rifle at the ready. "We're going out the emergency airlock, jet to the top of the dome, and plant the flag, so to speak. After a quick mic and comms check, we'll get back in here and await orders." "Good plan, sir," Kuchia said. "I'll keep a few claymores at hand. Once we get through the airlock, I want one on either side and one floating above the platform." "Copy," Kuchia said. "Really is like the Sat War all over again, except instead of getting shot, shit's trying to eat you." One day she prized some of the details about it from Dickerson and, she was about to say Carb, but Carb was dead. Died in her turret while killing the monsters before they had a chance at her. Kelly hoped she had that kind of spine when the end came. With that cheery thought in mind, she stepped inside the airlock and crouched with her weapon ready. "It's going to cycle fast," she said. "Copy." "Ready?" "Aye, sir." She blinked the command to open the airlock and the light above them flashed red. The inner door shut behind them, and instead of pausing for pressurization, the outer door cycled. Kelly moved to step out and stopped. "Freeze," she said, although Kuchia had apparently figured that out too. Before them was a minefield of pine cones reaching from the airlock's ledge into the hull plate below. This side of the dome was completely littered with them. To make matters worse, 3 starfish crawled among the ones on the hull plate. Another clung from the side of the dome, its arms reaching just below the lip of the airlock. In other words, the Void damn thing's arms were practically at forehead height. Kuchia said. "Other airlock?" The arms moved downward until they hit the ledge, the rest of the creature using them like a fulcrum to swing inside the airlock. Kelly kicked backward to the back of the airlock while Kuchia struck at the thing with his rifle. Kelly recovered her balance and shot the thing right in the maw just as his finger puckered to blast Kuchia with acid. The round vaporized the starfish center, and the dead arms drifted free. She waited for the attack to come, for the pine cones to all rise from their positions on the hull and for the starfish horde to come inside. Instead, nothing. "Sir, is that normal?" "No," she said. "I don't like it." He chuckled and said, "I do. The alternative was a bit dicey, sir." "Something's wrong," she said. "They're doing something new. I don't like it. The commander showed me portions of the hull plates they pulled up. It looked like the starfish finally figured out a way to damage outmost steel, or the pine cones are helping. Cuccia hung his head and sighed. What do we do about that? Try not to piss them off, she said. At least not until we get the comms up. Kelly took a step further past the airlock lip, rifle pointed upward just in case. When she could see the side of the dome rising into the shadows and it was clear of both pine cones and starfish, she breathed a sigh of relief. We're going to jet up just far enough to grab the side of the dome. If they attack, try and get back to the airlock. Unless they're swarming there. Right, she said. Unless. Ready? Aye, sir, Cuccia said, and walked until he was less than a meter away from her. All clear. With that, he rose from the airlock ledge and quickly darted forward to the side of the dome. Kelly waited for something to dissolve from the shadows and attack, but nothing happened. Finally, he said, Clear. She hit her jets and pushed herself to the dome's side just a meter away from Cuccia. The pair waited in silence, eyes scanning for an enemy. Nothing. From up here, Kelly saw the fields stretching further and further to the main dorsal airlocks. Pine cones and starfish congregating together, eating away at Trident's shell. How long before the hull plates began buckling? Climb, Kelly said, and scuttled upward, expertly alternating mag-locking one limb with the others in motion. She quickly reached the top of the dome, grabbed her rifle, and looked out over Trident's dorsal hull. The majority of the hull appeared cleaner than this area. Dents, rents, and the expected damage from micrometeorites or starfish carapaces notwithstanding. What she didn't see were sorties of starfish and pine cones roving space. She also didn't see the running lights of skiffs or SVs. Cuccia finally reached her, his breath chuffing through the radio. That was impressive, sir. Thank you, she said, and pulled off the combat radio kit. With the antenna unpacked and placed, she connected it to her suit and used the kit's transmitter. Command, this is Alpha. Do you read? No response. Nodding to herself, she blinked through the interface options and patched the receiver to rebroadcast to Trident's internal comms channel. That done, she tried again, this time disconnecting herself from the local network and using her suit radio. Alpha, this is Command. Hear you loud and mostly clear. Kelly grinned at that. Same, sir. If the support vehicles or ships try and make contact on the dorsal side, we should hear them. Copy, Dunn said. I'm finding volunteers to do the same on the ventral side. Good luck with that, she thought. Sir, there are a lot of pine cones and starfish. They didn't seem to mind us moving around either. Dunn was quiet for a moment. Kelly traded an uneasy glance with Cuccia before looking back out over the fields of pine cones and the starfish wriggling among them. The longer the delay, the more she feared something new and awful had happened. Alpha, they are almost through the hull plate near the main airlock. If they tear through, they'll have access to the engineering and maintenance crawl spaces. That sounds bad, she thought. No gravity, no grav plates, no light, no O2. Perfect environment for the little bastards, apart from the fact they'd like some light. Orders, sir? Find a way to disrupt them, Dunn said. When you think of one, give me a call. Aye, sir. Out. She sighed and looked at Cuccia. Back to the airlock. Talby flew close to Rack 3 to inspect the damage, and his comms lit up with chatter. Charlie, anyone read me? Went. Talby, where are you? The sergeant sounded as though he were smiling. We're in a module near the Rack 3 airlock. Got the skiff parked in here. Excellent. You in contact with anyone? No, sir. Talby figured that was too much to hope for. Any casualties? One port thruster gone and an aft thruster operating at 30%. Got several hull burns, but other than that, we just need ammunition. Ammo. Where the void were they going to get ammo? First things first, Talby said. We need a little help searching for Beta. Sir? Beta didn't succeed. We don't know what happened. Wint paused before responding, and Talby instantly knew the sergeant was thinking of Copenhagen. Copy, sir. Where would you like to meet? Rack 2, Talby said. Then we can... Trident Command. All squads report in. I repeat, this is Trident Command. All squads report in. The voice was Portunas's. Talby switched to the command frequency. Charlie, reporting in. Instead of Portunas responding, Dunn's voice immediately broke through the comms. Major, good to hear your voice. What's your status? We're near the end of Rack 2. Alpha SV and Charlie here. We've lost contact with all of Beta. Understood. We have an issue on the dorsal. We have pine cones and starfish eating through the hull. Talby gritted his teeth. How many? Tens of thousands, Dunn said. Kalimora's skiff is at Training Dome 3. She has one casualty, but Alpha is still capable of providing some support via skiff and small arms. Copy, sir. We'll need to rearm. We're bingo missiles, flechettes, and rifle ammo, Talby said. Going to escort the skiff to the combat bay. Lowell and I will head into the barn for a quick resupply. Copy, Major, Dunn said. We'll have a team ready. Copy, sir. Out. He switched to the squadron channel. Listen up. Instead of Wendt meeting them at the edge of Rack 2, Talby and Lowell met him at Rack 3. The sergeant hadn't been kidding about hull scarring. The skiff looked as though it had been through an acid bath. Wendt's turret had deep gouges through the Atmos steel as if talons had been dangerously close to perforating through all the layers. Talby shuddered, remembering the Battle of the Scar and watching those things tear apart the infantry. Trident itself had suffered quite a bit of exterior damage, although most appeared superficial. Between the gunners and the other bombardment, they managed to keep the starfish from completely destroying the station. Unless they penetrated from the dorsal side, that was. They rounded the side of the station, and one skiff headed into the combat bay, while Lowell and Talby landed their SVs in the barn. As Dunn had promised, 2 crews appeared and quickly rearmed them, as well as replaced their fuel cells. Command, Talby called. Can you patch me through to Kalimora? Fortunas didn't answer, but Kalimora did. Go for Alpha. Lowell and I are ready to leave the barn. Charlie's skiff will be joining us. Good to hear, sir. Alpha's skiff is in Training Dome 3. We are down to 2 combat-able personnel. We have full ammunition, both anti-personnel and gravitic, as well as every type of throwable imaginable. Our skiff is still functional as well. Over. A cam feed appeared on Talby's HUD, a quick pan of a field of pine cones barely visible in the deep shadows. Starfish crawled over them, occasionally ducking down to do something. Acid. Spraying acid. Thousands of them. At least, Kalimora said. Fortunas figures there's a starfish for every 20 or so pine cones. Shit, Talby thought. 2 SVs, 2 skiffs with only 5 Marines between them, and they had to take out all of that? Understood, Lieutenant. What are your orders? Strange thing to say to someone 3 ranks below you, but she was still in charge of the squadron. She didn't even seem to notice. The easiest approach is to come up the port side past the command module. Once you flip dorsal, you'll see the edges of the field. Terminate the edges and see what they do. If the starfish attack to protect the pine cones, we'll know how to proceed, sir. Not bad, he thought. Not bad at all. Does Trident have its dorsal batteries ready in case they take flight? They do, and they are, she said. But the Exos have to climb a fair distance away from the hull. We'll keep them interested, Talby said. I assume you want Wendt waiting in the wings, so to speak. Aye, sir. No need to risk infantry until we get an idea of what the behavioral patterns look like. We do this wrong, and it might just make things worse and get us all killed. That would definitely make things worse, Talby mused silently. Understood, Lieutenant. I'll radio once we reach dorsal side. Out. He added both Lowell and Wendt to his squad channel. We're heading dorsal side. Wendt, I want you to remain out of sight and out of harm's way. Lowell, provide air cover for Wendt. Once we reach the dorsal side, I'm going to thin out the edges of the pine cone field. Pine cones, sir? Wendt asked. Thousands of them, Talby said, which is why I don't want you anywhere near them. We want to try and drive them into range of the station's turrets. Right now they're all sitting on the hull and chewing on the plates. Oh, Wendt said dumbly. Aye, sir. Lowell, Talby asked, you've seen the hollows of the battle? Aye, Major. Those things we call pine cones like to swarm or herd or whatever you want to call it. Regardless, they move like intelligent bullets and can do a lot of damage. They also have a talon that can scar Atmo. Lowell was silent for a moment. They sound fun, sir. Talby grinned. Flechettes and gravitics will more than do the job, but if they get on your hull, you'll more or less be helpless to peel them off. Copy, sir, Lowell said. So if I get infested, I should make a pass by the skiff for a good cleaning? That's the best idea I've heard all day, Talby said, meaning it. Wendt? We can do that, sir. Gravitics won't scar the SV armor. Right, Talby said. How long before you're rearmed? Just finished, Wendt said. Running system checks now. Time was ticking by. It would take more minutes than he wanted to reach the dorsal side, and probably more still to get Wendt and Lowell situated. Meanwhile, those hull plates were getting closer and closer to allowing the Exos inside the station. After that, it was impossible to know what would happen. More Marines. If only we had more Void Dam Marines.